The armored vehicle sat motionless under the burning afternoon sun, surrounded by 50 of the country's brightest engineers, and not one of them could make it move. Sweat rolled down their faces as military officers barked orders across the dusty testing field. Wires had been stripped, engines dismantled, computers reset again and again, yet the machine remained dead like a giant steel coffin. And somewhere in the distance, the sound of approaching helicopters warned them that General Victor Hale would arrive within the hour. If the vehicle failed today, careers would end, contracts would collapse, and millions of dollars would vanish into humiliation. But no one noticed the quiet man standing near the outer fence with grease on his hands and exhaustion in his eyes. Before we continue, if you believe kindness and second chances can change lives, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Unlimited. Your support helps bring more emotional stories like this to people who need hope today. Elias Mercer was not an engineer. He did not wear an expensive suit or carry a polished briefcase. He worked in a maintenance garage behind the military facility, repairing transport trucks and broken generators while trying to survive paycheck to paycheck as a single father. Every morning before sunrise, he packed lunch for his 7-year-old daughter Nora, braided her messy brown hair with trembling hands because he still had not learned properly, and rushed to work before the city fully woke up. Since losing his wife 2 years earlier to a sudden illness, life had become a constant battle between grief and responsibility. Sleep barely existed anymore. Bills stacked higher every month. Some nights he skipped dinner just to make sure Nora had enough food for school the next day. Yet despite everything, Elias carried a quiet dignity that few people noticed. That afternoon, he had been repairing an old supply truck near the testing grounds when he overheard the panic surrounding the armored vehicle project called Titan X. The machine had been designed for battlefield rescue missions and cost nearly $300 million. 50 engineers from the top defense firms had worked on it for years, but during its final demonstration, the entire system suddenly shut down without explanation. The field was tense with fear. Officers argued. Technicians shouted over one another. Expensive laptops glowed under the sunlight while frustrated engineers blamed software failures, hydraulic pressure, electrical overloads, and design flaws. Every solution failed. Every minute brought the helicopter closer. Elias tried to ignore it and return to his truck repair, but something bothered him. Earlier that morning, while unloading equipment nearby, he had heard a strange clicking sound coming from the vehicle's rear compartment. It was small, almost invisible beneath the chaos. But years of fixing broken machinery had trained his ears differently. Machines spoke in patterns, and Elias had spent his entire life listening. At first, he stayed silent. Men like him were never invited into conversations like these. He had no degree hanging on a wall. No impressive title. Just calloused hands and worn boots covered in oil stains. But when he saw one young engineer slam a toolbox onto the ground in frustration, Elias slowly stepped closer. The moment he approached the group, several engineers looked at him with annoyance. One officer told him the area was restricted. Another dismissed him before he could even speak. But Elias gathered enough courage to quietly mention the clicking noise he had heard earlier near the hydraulic relay system. Some laughed instantly. 50 engineers had failed for 6 hours, and now a garage mechanic thought he understood the problem. Elias lowered his eyes, embarrassed, ready to walk away. But then an older colonel stopped him. The colonel had watched the entire disaster unfold, and desperation was beginning to replace pride. With little choice left, he ordered the engineers to let Elias inspect the vehicle for 5 minutes. The giant armored machine towered over him as he climbed inside. The air smelled of overheated metal and electrical smoke. Everyone outside waited impatiently while Elias carefully moved through the narrow compartments. He touched the panels gently, listening more than looking. His fingers stopped near a small pressure valve hidden beneath a cluster of wiring harnesses. There it was again. Click. Click. Tiny. Uneven. Wrong. Elias realized the problem immediately. A simple manufacturing defect in a backup pressure seal had caused microscopic air leakage into the hydraulic control system. The onboard computers interpreted the pressure drop as catastrophic failure and locked the entire vehicle into shutdown mode. It was not software. Not electrical. Not mechanical collapse. Just one overlooked seal no bigger than a coin. But because the system was designed by separate departments, none of the engineers had checked the simplest connection between them. Elias removed the damaged seal carefully and improvised a temporary replacement using material from a nearby transport hose. His hands shook under the pressure while dozens of experts watched him in silence. He tightened the valve, wiped sweat from his forehead, and stepped back. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then the armored vehicle roared to life. The engine thundered across the testing field like a waking beast. Lights flashed. Systems rebooted perfectly. Dust exploded beneath the tires as the machine rolled forward smoothly for the first time all day. The entire field froze in disbelief. Some engineers stared at Elias like they were seeing him for the first time. Others looked away in shame. The colonel stood speechless while the sound of helicopters grew louder overhead. Seconds later, General Hale arrived just in time to witness the Titan X driving flawlessly across the field. What should have been a national embarrassment transformed into triumph within minutes. But the moment that truly changed everything came later. As the celebration unfolded, Elias quietly returned to his garage. He assumed nobody would care once the crisis ended. Men like him fixed problems and disappeared. That was how life worked. But an hour later, the colonel entered the garage holding a small photo that had fallen from Elias's wallet during the repair. It showed Nora smiling beside a birthday cake with missing candles because Elias could not afford enough that year. The colonel looked around the worn garage, the leaking roof, the ancient tools, and finally at the exhausted single father standing beside a half-repaired truck. That evening, the military offered Elias a permanent engineering consultant position despite his lack of formal credentials. News of what happened spread quickly through the facility. Some called it a miracle. Others called it genius. But the colonel described it differently. He said the world had become so obsessed with titles that it forgot the value of people who learned through struggle. For the first time in years, Elias drove home with Hope sitting beside him. When he opened the apartment door, Nora ran into his arms laughing because he was home early for once. He held her tightly, fighting tears as sunlight poured through the tiny kitchen window behind them. The next morning, he took her to school himself instead of rushing away before dawn. And weeks later, when Elias received his first real paycheck from his new position, he surprised Nora with a small backyard swing set she had wanted for years. She cried before he did. Sometimes heroes are not the loudest people in the room. Sometimes they are the exhausted single parents silently carrying pain while the world overlooks them. And sometimes the people dismissed as ordinary are the very ones capable of saving everything when it matters most. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and share this video so more people can hear stories that inspire hope and kindness in difficult times. And before we end, special request, comment below. Never underestimate humble people. Because somewhere in this world, another quiet soul like Elias may be waiting for someone to finally believe in them. Thank you for watching Kindness Unlimited. Until next time, keep spreading kindness wherever you go.